Today, Toronto is a city of 4.5 million people. Growing by 1,000 every week, it is one of the most multicultural cities in the world. Back in 1847, the city was just 13 years old, a frontier community of 20,000 people. The arrival of 40,000 Irish was almost more than the city could bear, the equivalent of 9 million refugees descending on Toronto today. Archaeologist Ron Williamson is among those trying to rediscover the events of the summer of 1847.
This is actually one of my favorite places in the city because we can really see the evolution of the city over the last 200 years, at least the shoreline portion. The waterfront, the shoreline of the city actually was here 200 years ago. So to imagine what this was like in the 1840s, you have to see this whole area as water. This was actually Toronto Harbor in front of us here. And it would have been full of steamers, it would have been full of tall ships, coming up to the piers that extended out from about where we are now out into the lake. So Reese's Wharf, which is where the Irish landed in 1847, would be just beyond the Rogers Dome and the CN Tower.
The search for clues has led to Toronto's city archives. Historian Mark McGowan believes he has found the location of temporary fever sheds built to house the sick and dying refugees.
There had been a dispute as to where any of the emigrants would be taken lest they were diseased. One party had hoped that they would be able to isolate them from the main part of the population and put them on a separate facility on the peninsula. It ended up by late May, they were able to negotiate with the doctors at the hospital at King and John's, roughly here. And as one can see, it's well away from the main core of the population. Unfortunately, because of the construction of the fever sheds as temporary structures, there was probably a very little chance of finding any archaeological remains there. But the hospital itself, because it was a permanent structure and because of the stone and the brickwork that were involved, we were very hopeful of finding something.
Mark's research has provided the archaeologists with vital evidence in their search and has led Ron Williamson towards a building site in the city centre.
We're walking on John Street. John Street existed at that time. Just meters from us, in 1847, there would have been wagons with the very ill riding down along John Street, having disembarked at Reese's Pier, which is only about a block west of here. So this is the very route people would have taken. Maybe some, if they could find the strength, walking, but many of them on wagons, accompanied to the hospital and the fever sheds. Well, actually, that is the very spot where the crane is, where the hospital was and the fever sheds. That's this place, the destination of this procession along John Street.